Good morning, good evening, good night. It is another episode of Layer1Live. Throwing out the Mike, you laughing at my slogan there? You laughing at my mantra?
I'm getting used to it. I'm glad that the bell is gone. That bell only lasted one episode. But
Hey,
yeah,
man.
no, man, I like the intro.
Okay, I appreciate it. Well, if you guys want the bell back, please just comment, man. We'll throw it back. It's not all up to Mike now. Dimitri, did you like the bell?
I have mixed feelings about it.
Well,
He's in the library, so it's quiet. No bells for him.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
He's got to be real quiet. No smoking sections in the library either. So, so we got a great episode, man. It's another Monday. We're glad to have you guys along. Scott was commenting before the episode even went live and was saying that he's studying for his real estate exam. So, Scott, we send a big shout out to you. Good luck on that exam. Good luck on that studying that's going on. So, yeah, great episode, guys. We definitely want to get, usually the format here is we want to get to team news and like updates. We got a pretty cool one today. We'll hit the breaking news, so anything that like broke within the last 24 hours, quick news, and then discussion there as we go along. If you guys can look on the column right to our, I guess, stage right, stage left, is the column where if you want to click in afterwards, you can see like what we're talking about. So we're going to hit Ethereum, we're going to hit EOS, and we're going to hit Binance today. And we're obviously going to talk about Bitcoin. Shun's in the chat. What's going on, Shun? We're filling in here. We'll wait a little bit for you guys. We'll start blasting it on social media as we go along. So should be a good episode, guys. What's going on this week, man? What has happened over the past 7 days for you guys?
Well, I had a fantastic charity poker event. For those of you that didn't follow us on, what was it, Thursday? I guess that happened. We had an unfortunate event. Basically, the Giving Block and Sat Street and a handful of other folks put on this awesome charity poker event to raise money for COVID-19 and some of the fallout there. And $100 joined, figured I would do terrible. The goal was basically not to lose on the first hand. And as I went down like 35% from the jump, pushed out by Alex from New York City, who went all in against me. And then I ended up going all in against him and was kind of slowly making my way up. And then the stream went down. For those of you that were watching, it was the most annoying thing. So
Mike got hacked.
Yeah, I got hacked, basically hacked by my own VPN. So PokerStars wouldn't let you join the tournament, even though you can make an account from the US. They wouldn't let you join the tourney unless you were on VPN, basically. So at some point there was a break in the action. I muted and left and came back and hit unmute and it got frozen. But anyway, made it down to like top 33. So that was definitely a lot of fun. Got to play with the Binance US CEO, Catherine Cooley, who I watched like eliminate like 4 or 5 people and take their souls in pretty epic ways. The CEO from Polymath and a handful of other CEO from Balance. Tone Vase was in there for a little while. They like kind of shuffle the tables around as you go, but friggin' Charlie Lee won the Litecoin founder. So he I'm sure he
does.
Yeah, he dumped at the top, if you will.
Yeah. It was great helping out Mike during the process. I gave him a few tips and tricks on how to scheme in poker games.
I don't remember those too vividly for some reason.
Yeah,
I think it was more
whiskey though. So.
I was drinking a lot of whiskey.
Yeah.
I think it was more like you just laughing in my face whenever I mucked against like a flush or something.
Mike was trying to also get insider information from like the ARC guys and other guys too. It was interesting.
Yeah, it's a cool concept. They said they're going to do it again next month. So if you guys are poker fans, it does last a few hours, but pop in, say hello, see how I'm doing. Hopefully I can improve and not just kind of fall from 33rd as we go.
Yeah, the guys that put it on were Sat Street and the Giving Block. And speaking of the Giving Block, we're looking to have them on the podcast. I guess the interview would be tomorrow, but it would be released on Wednesday. So maybe we can have kind of like a follow-up with them. We can talk about your success there, and we'd love to hear like insight on like what they're doing on the inside there. So let me hit the stats really quick, guys, and then we could continue that discussion here. We got top 5 countries for the week. We had US, UK, actually US, Australia, UK, Germany, and Canada. And then we had top 3 episodes. We had Alex Masmej. He's already killing the views.
Wow.
He was a great, he's Was a great interview. Kid's a freaking shooting star in crypto right now, man. And Valendiero Digital Assets, we had that Christopher Brookins episode at the beginning of last week, and then Solana's still pulling in the views. Like I said, upcoming guests, the Giving Block, and then we're looking for props at the end of the week, but we'll keep you guys updated on social media, whether we have them on 5/1 and then TBA on 5/5. So I believe BlockFi is end of May as well. So you guys keep it up there. But that's pretty much the stats for the week. We have a good episode. We're talking Bitfinex launching a social media platform here. dForce is getting their money back, which is very interesting. Got quick news, and then we're gonna hit everything that's going on in crypto right now. So congrats on that. Congrats on that win, though, Mike. That was a
What'd you do with the winnings?
Yeah, where's the winnings at?
Yeah. I donated them back. Of course, it's the right thing. It's the right thing to do. It was $100 buy-in. And I think I won like $82. So
nice.
I didn't even win my buy-in back. But I think most of kind of the major crypto folks were donating, and then they were going to give us a shout out on Twitter. So hopefully we get a nice little Layer 1 shout out because I donated those winnings. But other than that, before we hit breaking here, we're trying something new. For those of you that saw it about a week and a half ago, we're trying this Layer 1 Hangout. I kind of like that name, Layer 1 Hangout.
Yeah, Kieran. Yeah.
Nice. Shout out Kieran for the name. But it'll be on Saturdays at some point in the afternoon, like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. I think Deem is usually up by that time.
When I wake up, yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be good. And we're just casually talking crypto, right? Like we're in this stuff day after day. Some weeks are fun, some weeks are boring, but we're always trying to share our insight and share kind of what we're seeing in the space for you guys. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't joined the Telegram yet, check it out. It's t.me/SutlerVentures. It will soon be t.me/ probably Layer 1 Pod.
Yeah, something to that effect.
So other than that, we can run right into breaking news if you want, Q.
Yeah, awesome. So we're going to start today with Bitfinex. Bitfinex has been on this channel a good amount of times, but this time it's for launching or unveiling and launching their social media platform. Basically, this is just an add-on to their site where traders can actually go on and like post, follow, and comment to each other. So basically they launched this social media platform called Pulse. This was announced, and we have the article here, which I'll drop. This article was actually on You Today, which I don't believe we've used. But basically, the CTO came out and announced that Pulse, just an add-on to their platform, it allows for trading and communication between users of Bitfinex. So Bitfinex trying to keep their users on their site. I'm interested to see if like the Leo token will somehow be involved. I know a lot of social media platforms are adding this tokenization effect where you can like upvote and maybe earn a certain amount of tokens. So maybe that's a future utility for the Leo token. But basically this is just Bitfinex's way of trying to keep all of their users on their site. It literally is just like an extension on top of the Bitfinex platform already, so it doesn't even take you to another site. The format actually is just like in a very, how would I even explain this to people that don't have voice, but it's in a very like Twitter-esque format where it's just like short posts. It shows the headline, it shows the actual user that posted it, and then it gives you like a certain amount of characters to pretty much say anything, which is essentially where Twitter and Medium are going.
I wonder if they're going to implement like social trading where you can post your positions and stuff. I think that would be a really cool idea. A lot of platforms like eToro, like they do that. Social trading is huge, so I think that's the direction that might be going.
Yeah, Bitfinex is kind of in a weird spot. I feel like most of the other exchanges are moving pretty fast with what their goals are. Like obviously Binance has a variety of different goals. They're kind of moving everywhere. Another piece of breaking news was that BitPay just added BUSD. So you'll be able to spend BUSD anywhere that BitPay is integrated. But I was looking this weekend at Bitfinex BTC futures. Deem, I want to get your guess on what you think an average daily Bitfinex Bitcoin futures volume is.
Average daily Bitfinex daily. Hold on, let me see. I'll tell you right now.
You got to guess.
Yeah, I know. I'm guessing. So like, I would say like 400 mil.
1 mil. Unless skew is off, I mean, I'm getting this data from skew.com, which is pretty legit, but yeah, they had a massive fall off after March 12th. So March 12th, even still for Bitcoin futures, the highest was like 47 million or 46 million. That was on March 9th and March 13th. So
that's with leverage.
I believe so. I mean, it's just pure aggregated daily volumes for Bitfinex, which, to give you guys an idea, if you're not looking at Bitfinex and you're looking at something like a Binance, their BTC futures volumes were 2.1 billion yesterday on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So very strange. Like I said, either skews volumes off or Bitfinex is struggling, at least on the futures side. I'm not sure what spot looks like, but yeah, it's an interesting move with the social media platform with them, because you would think it's not, to me, Bitfinex, it doesn't scream to me like an exchange that would launch a social media platform anyway.
Yeah, it's pretty much just like a forum/message board for their platform at this point. I think it's just a way to offer your different utility to their actual users and keep them on the site and keep them, more integrated together, if that makes sense. Like kind of entangles that relationship aspect. To Dima's point, there is going to be like a leaderboard. So it says the leaderboard shows the results of top traders ranked by their realized/unrealized profit or trading volume. So there's going to be that, and then there's also a way where you can integrate that into your Twitter account. So I'm just assuming it's like one-click share of like your unrealized or realized profits. That'll be interesting.
It's basically like a fancy way of doing the troll box.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's
Makes
pretty much
sense.
it for Bitfinex. We'll see how that social media platform goes for those people already trading on Bitfinex. I think it's a good feature. I don't know how much this is going to like net in other users, because it's literally just going to be some like pool of already Bitfinex users. I think that's essentially going to be what it's used for.
Makes sense. Yeah. The next piece of breaking news here we have is from good old dForce and the lendf.me platform, which I still can't get over that unfortunate name. But as I'm sure everybody knows at this point, lendf.me was hacked or attacked, whatever you kind of want to say, and $25 million worth of various crypto assets were drained from their smart contract. So, excuse me, for a while, it was thought that was just going to be gone, but it sounds like they were able to roughly locate and identify the hacker and kind of use their various resources and legal team to get the money back. So the money was returned, and now that the money has been returned, lendf.me is starting what they're calling an asset redistribution plan, which is basically going to be a way for those users who owned those various crypto assets to get their crypto assets back. Now, sounds simple, right? If this was a typical refund at like a retail store or something, easy peasy. But when you look at crypto and things are decentralized and anonymous, becomes a little bit more difficult to identify whose money this actually is. So if you were unfortunately a part of that attack and you're looking for your money back, there's a very in-depth and kind of well thought out redistribution plan that I won't go into here. It's on dForce's Medium, but good to see that people are going to get their funds back.
Yeah.
What a name. lendf.me.
I'm guessing that the other 10% is like some type of bug bounty now for this hacker. So he returned 90% and kept 10%. I knew he kept like 400 or 500K.
I think it was negotiated probably.
Yeah, I've heard various reports. I heard that they got 100% back, and then you were saying they got 90% back. So I don't know exactly how much they got back. But it's it's all on chain. They've set up basically like a separate recovery account, which is where the assets are going to live while they figure all this out. But from here, I mean, one of the other things we're going to talk about this episode is the class action lawsuit that popped up for Maker after March 12th and some of the issues they had. So I don't know where lendf.me and dForce go from here. If they can regain trust and basically kind of like rebuild a user base, that will be pretty impressive. But they're still very much in recovery mode.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's pretty much going to do it for our breaking news. We'll head into quick news and then discussion. So we've got Dimitri up for the quick news, and then I'll move over our columns here. So
let me start the quick news with the bang. The chip maker Ebang files for 100 million IPO in US. So basically, it's a chip maker for mining, and they try to file an IPO in HK back in the day, to be like conduct a 1 billion IPO in Hong Kong, but that got shut down. So they didn't really, they weren't able to pull through with that. So now what they're trying to do is trying to get IPO on Nasdaq, and let me see, it's 100 million IPO. And as far as the company goes, obviously like 2019 wasn't really a good year for them. They brought in 109 million in revenues, and like prior to that year they brought in like over 300 million. So you can see the drop off there. And it's very, like, obviously it's very correlated to the Bitcoin price. If the Bitcoin price is not doing well, the chip maker for miners is obviously not going to do well, in that environment. But also, if you want to, know about other companies that IPO that are similar to this one, there was a Canaan, or whatever it's called,
Canaan.
Canaan, yeah.
See, I keep thinking it's Canaan, so go
Canaan,
ahead.
yeah.
You can do Canaan, that's fine.
Canaan IPO.
The hard-hitting news here.
Yeah, IPO'd in November 2019, and they raised like 90 million, and their share price basically went from $9 per share to $4.23 right now. So I don't know, with this, if this does go through in IPOs, given where things are right now, I wouldn't really look for a pump in their shares.
Yeah, who's buying IPOs right now?
Yeah,
it's tough.
So yeah, moving right along, Russia is making the news. So basically, there's an article that came out from Decrypt saying that Russians turn to cash and Bitcoin as coronavirus sinks economy. So, Russia's economy obviously is not, doing well because of many factors, the corona, oil, and so on, right? And Russian people, they're kind of familiar with the previous crisis that happened back in the day in like 1990s, 1998, when they got hit financially and you couldn't really withdraw funds from the banks. So now they're kind of rushing to the banks and starting to withdraw the funds just because of the uncertainty of the, how their economy is going to be. And Russia, of course, puts on restrictions where you can't withdraw, you can only withdraw an X amount, and all these things that they're going to stop, to slow down people from, running on the banks. So right now you can withdraw in Russia up to like $15,000, which is 1 million rubles. And beyond that, there's restrictions there. So I think people are turning to some of the people turning into crypto, and there's Kraken has reported a pretty big influx in terms of new accounts from Russia, and the volumes are going up. So it's possible that, I think my theory with that is a lot of Russians, they tend to, when there's a crisis, they tend to move away from their currency into dollars, but Russia as a government restricts that. It tries to slow it down as much as possible, because it becomes like a vicious cycle, right? You drop rubles, buy dollars, and ruble drops in value. So I think what they're doing, they might be using maybe crypto as a proxy to get into some of the stable coins, US dollar, maybe some Bitcoin too, but it's definitely a way for them to kind of to hedge that. Also, maybe some of the Russians that do have an account or had an account in crypto, maybe they're cashing out some of their crypto for liquidity as well. That's a possible theory in terms of the uptick from Russia in general. So I think Russians see that the things are not looking good for the future, so they're trying to come up with ways to hedge out all this risk that's coming.
Yeah, it's hard to have an episode without talking all of this global macroeconomic events that are happening. And me and Mike were actually talking last night about the future of Bitcoin and short, long term on where we see it going. And you make the point all the time that it's about on ramps in these countries, right? Because if you start to have countries that essentially like their entire country's economy is going to shit. You're going to have all of the retail users coming in, hopefully, from that economy. But it feels like the on-ramps aren't there in like very like third world-esque countries. So like countries like Africa, if something does happen, the on-ramps, at least to my knowledge, aren't there yet. But Russia seems like a great example of a country where the on-ramps are completely, like the rails are 100% there in line for this kind of event. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, Binance in CZ has been hosting events in Russia and expanding that market there. So the access is there. One thing that I'll tell you for sure is that the government of Russia has started to notice this, and they started putting out rhetoric in regards to saying that cryptocurrency should not be legal or restricted and slow down and so on, because but like if things are going well, right, if things are peachy, then nobody really cares about the crypto stuff, but once things hit the fan in the economy and they start seeing the capital, people going around the capital restrictions by using this loophole in crypto, then they're like, okay, no, you know what, crypto is no good. So yeah, for sure. But in regards to what you said, other countries that don't have those rails in place, they still have access to buy crypto, but they're buying it at a huge premium. Bitcoin, they're buying Bitcoin at, like we've seen back in the day when you remember there was some transactions and like in Iran where somebody paid like 40% over like the market price. So like all those ITC guys are going to be making money if there's no legitimate access to the market prices.
That Iran conflict feels like it was a year ago now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't that feel like it was like years ago at this point? But guys, we have you in the chat. We appreciate you guys joining in today. I think we're up to 12 now. So appreciate you guys joining in. Please leave a like. It does help us get noticed among the broader crypto community, but we're happy to have just you into the community channel today, community episode. So it's Layer1Live. We started at 1:30, but let me go through the rest of the breaking news here. I think Mike's going to hit some as well. I'm going to go through this real quick. It looks like Tron is seeing 65,000 new accounts since April 19th, and this primarily has to do with this Justin token sale. Don't know much about the JST token and what it actually represents, but basically you're going to have Poloniex doing this IEO, and in order to actually take part in that token sale, you're going to need to hold TRX, which is probably the reason why we've seen so many new accounts created on Tron. There are, other reasons why one might create, accounts on Tron, but for now we're going to go with that. We've seen Aetherium actually go from 200,000 active accounts to 400,000 active accounts just over the past month. I don't know what the reasoning for that is. We can kind of like talk about that if we want to real quick, but so we're seeing a large amount of accounts be created over the past month and a half, maybe since that Black Thursday event in March timeframe. So it's interesting stuff, guys.
ETH's on fire for sure. From a volume standpoint, their futures volumes are significant and staying strong. Their open interest has jumped all the way back up to levels that we haven't seen since beginning of February. And then obviously, it pumped up and crashed right around March 12th. But ETH is doing well. We've got some other ETH news coming up here in a bit too.
Yeah, for sure. Let me hit the rest of this. So I have Vechain partnering with a company called Real Items so that they can put K95, or it looks like KN95 masks coming from China onto the blockchain. So just like a quick supply chain thing there. So we have Vechain doing some good work, trying to get N95 mask onto the blockchain to make sure that they're legit and not some like N94 or some type of BS mask. So that's good. Vechain's doing some good work.
Yeah, there's gotta be a huge problem with that, I'm sure, the counterfeit masks.
I want to also add to the Vechain hype train. So Vechain also partnered with H&M. I don't know if you guys saw that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. So Vechain has launched a new partnership with the fashion brand H&M, and basically it's kind of like using for internal purposes at H&M the blockchain tech. So
nice.
I thought that was pretty interesting too.
Gotcha. Very cool. I get the final 3 quick news here. Andreesen Horowitz is raising another crypto fund most recent one was in 2018 for about 350 million. This one is supposedly going to be 450 million, will be the second crypto fund. So here in the next few years, A16Z will be investing heavily, I'm sure. Next, interesting news on the Polkadot side. So Coinbase Custody announced a handful of weeks or so ago that they were going to be offering their services for the brand new Polkadot chain. Right now it's in testnet, which is called Kusama, and has seen some really great price action north, basically, showing that the Polkadot price will end up being over $100 when it's initially listed. But they've teamed up with Bison Trails to offer Polkadot staking to clients as well. So great for Polkadot, obviously, and another foray from Coinbase Custody into staking and some of the other things that they're doing there. They've been focusing on DeFi quite a bit. We talked about that last week. And then finally, on the proof of stake side, or the new proof of stake chain side, of which there are many these days, Filecoin has unfortunately delayed their mainnet yet again. So they raised around 50 million in a pre-ICO sale, and then over 200 million in their 2017 ICO, and for a long time has been touted as what would be basically the most well-known decentralized file storage platform, but to date haven't been able to obviously launch. So now they're aiming for between July 20th and August 21 for the mainnet to go live, which is still kind of scary when you can't basically break it down to one individual date. You have to give a month time frame there. And then finally, Near Protocol, which uses proof of authority, which is an interesting kind of hybrid proof of stake model that aims to essentially KYC its nodes, at least to start, and ensure that identities are behind these nodes. Basically uses, instead of proof of stake where your coins are used to theoretically validate the transactions, it's your actual identity and a general reputation or trust in the network. So their mainnet is supposed to have launched by now. It might launch today. They said between April 22nd and 27th. They're basically going to release it in 3 increments. They'll have the proof of authority, where basically the Near Foundation runs everything. Then they'll have a mainnet restricted period, which will be sometime this summer, where existing token holders and those that they basically approve, what they're calling whitelisted professional validators, will be able to validate on chain. And then finally, which is slated as to be decided by the community, there will be some sort of community vote that happens, that the community comes together and says, hey, we're ready to distribute the tokens. We're ready to basically create the community side of the Near chain. So we've had Solana on the podcast. They had a big listing pump. You've got Near, you've got Filecoin. There's a ton of different platforms out there. CeeLo and a handful. Avalanche is another one. Space Mesh. There's so many these days. But that is what we have on quick news.
Gotcha. Well, this second portion is going to be discussion, guys. Obviously, these are kind of structured beforehand, so we've got our a dashboard that we have, and we're gonna discuss topics that we've already implemented. But if you guys throw in some topics that you want to talk about, so for example, Shun, which is a comment I'll get to in a second. If you guys have any topics that you want us to discuss, we are open to doing all that, man. Those are actually probably more entertaining because it's kind of off the cuff, and we have to really give our thoughts just from having a knowledge of being in the space for an amount of time and doing research weekly and things like that. So please leave comments that you want us to discuss, and we'll get to them. But otherwise, let me get the column moved here, and we'll move into discussion. We've got Bitcoin mining, we've got Coinbase Oracle, framework taking an investment in Kava, and MakerDAO. So let's get started here.
Yeah, for sure. This is something that Q and I were talking about yesterday. I was talking to Zach Lee about this, but obviously everyone's focus is on the halving here coming up in May. It's scheduled for May 11th, May 12th, depending on where you're located around the globe. And interestingly enough, coincides with what is called the rainy season in China. So those of you that are based in Asia, Shun, maybe you're already aware of this being based in Taiwan. But basically, spring is a pretty welcome time for Bitcoin mining businesses in China because the rainy season that exists in May and June creates more water in a lot of, say, the hydropower plants, which then thus makes the electricity cheap and mining more profitable, assuming all else is equal. That last part is really kind of the key of this discussion, right? All else equal, because I think that if we were not in this recession, you could kind of claim, or at least moving into this recession, you could claim that all else would be equal, and this would be much more of a bullish event. But the thing that I wanted to pitch to you guys, and definitely want to pitch to those that are listening along and can comment in the chat here live, is where you see Bitcoin going past the halving, from a price standpoint, from a general kind of usage standpoint. Are we going to head into a bear market? Are we going to head into a bull market? And I'll preface this question by basically laying out two scenarios that Zach Lee and I came to. And one would be more of a bullish scenario, and one would be more of a bearish scenario. The bullish scenario basically is summed up to the fact that because you have memes like Money Printer Go Burr, and you have stimulus checks, and you have just kind of this crazy digitalization effect happening with everybody moving to digital entertainment and being stuck in the house with quarantine, that Bitcoin, even though we're in a recession here, is going to see at least equal, if not more, demand, especially on the retail side. Now, that coupled with the fact that miners are going to have to be producing half as less blocks, right, via the halving, there will be less sell pressure. And part of that would be because miners are, especially the larger ones, really much more of an industrial sized operation. Some of them are making hundreds of millions of dollars every year. They're able to raise capital a lot more effectively than they were 4 or even 8 years ago. So there's really less concern with the larger miners that control the majority of the network and produce the most BTC, that they're going to have some giant issue with Bitcoin being priced where it is, and thus having to sell more Bitcoin into the market than they do here currently. So that's kind of scenario one. That's the bullish argument. Basically, demand from retail is going to outstrip selling pressure that we see from miners or elsewhere. And the bearish argument is that because we saw the dump down to 3,900, and because all of the chaos in the general market here, because you have a crazy amount of people in the U.S., we're somewhere between, I think, 10 and 15% unemployment, if not higher, that it's going to be very hard for retail demand to maintain and may even lessen as quarantine goes on, and as hopefully people try to get back to work, but kind of the realization sets in that this is going to take us a little time to kind of get back to normal. So, for that reason, for a lack of on-hand cash from normal consumers, you're going to have the same, if not less, retail demand, coupled with the fact that while miners are more industrial and they are larger, they've had some issues on the chip making side, which, as we saw with Ebang and Quick News, that is a majority of where they pull their revenue from. Ebang, for an example, I know they're more of a chip maker than a miner, but they pull 90% of their revenues from chip making. And if you look online, it's pretty crazy, right? Distributors of these mining chips, Antminer S9s on Alibaba in the secondhand market are going from supposedly anywhere from $20 to $80 per unit, whereas at the height of the 2017 craze, a single unit of Antminer S9 would cost over $3,000. Now, obviously it's a newer product at that time, and maybe people don't want to buy some of the older chips, but you kind of get the general feel that even though these miners are larger, and even though maybe they're well capitalized, that a price not around 10K is, all things considered, context not being all else equal, essentially with the recession, that they're going to be forced to sell more or an even amount of Bitcoin, coupled with a lack in retail demand. So those are the two scenarios. I think those are really the two main areas where we're going to see buy pressure or sell pressure. So I'll kick it over to you guys. I definitely want to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I like that. I like those two scenarios you presented. Like from my side, I think a lot of like bigger miners, those sophisticated miners, are already hedging out the risk of the halvening, or halving, whatever
We got
it's
to keep
called.
using halvening.
Halvening, yeah. So, and that can be seen like right now, even if you look at the put to call ratios and options and derivatives, those things are rising. So there's more puts that are being bought, which essentially could be a hedge from, some of these miners that are coming into an uncertain event like that's coming up, and we don't know how the price is going to react. So I think in general, if we didn't have the derivatives, futures and all these products that you could use to hedge potential volatility, and or not being able to lock in a specific price where you can operate at profit even if BTC dumps after this event, if we didn't have those products, then I would say that this could be a pretty bearish scenario where you're going to see a lot of miners and so on getting squeezed out because now they're getting less revenue coming in. All right, so but with the products in hand that we have here in the market now, I think it does offer opportunity for them to really hedge out and mediate some of that risk. Now, there's obviously going to be some miners that are not going to have they're not going to be maybe that sophisticated in that sense, and they might not just do anything, and they will think that BTC will moon, and those are the ones that are exposing themselves to the risk. Therefore, it's possible to see some of them maybe get acquired, start to raise funds, and so on. Some consolidation in the mining sector. But as far as the dumping of the price that's significant that we've seen on Black Thursday, I don't think that's going to be the case. I like the video that Mike, you shared where BlockFi explained, actually the CEO of BlockFi explained what he saw from there and from the lending side when Black Thursday was happening. And it was interesting to see how there was shortage of basically dollars that can be lended during that time. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then they turn to their Western partners and access liquidity there. So I think the Black Thursday itself, even though it was brutal, it did show a few things that actually that can work in the disastrous environment. So if things are going really bad, a lot of people are coming together from east to west, and they're working together and establishing new connections. So in case anything like that happens again, then there will be no significant drop off in price like that, where everybody just says, hey, the confidence game is gone in BTC. So
yeah, part of what Zach from BlockFi was saying too, alongside that, was that because there was a shortage of US dollars, a lot of the larger miners or market makers weren't able to add margin in stable coins, and thus they were forced to sell some of those crypto assets, be it BTC or ETH, to fill in some of the borrowing that they've done, and made sure that they weren't margin called. There's two important points you bring up there before I kick it over to you, Q, that I think give added context to this situation and hopefully kind of lend some more information. The first one that you brought up was the funding rate and futures and how that exists within the market. And if you look since March 12th, we've been in an interesting scenario where, for those of you who aren't familiar with the funding rate on futures exchanges, basically for the majority of the time over a year, longs will pay shorts. That's typically what data shows. That's historically how it works. You'll have some months where shorts do end up paying longs, but typically as the price of Bitcoin goes up, you should be paid by the longs to go short, and vice versa. Now, what we've seen since March 12th is obviously the Bitcoin price increasing, right? We're coming up on 100% from that bottom at about 38.90, but the funding rate has been negative consistently, which means shorts are forced to pay longs. So you have a scenario here over the last 6 weeks where not only are you making money by going long, as we've seen the price increase by almost 100%, but you're also getting paid by those who are going short to go long, which is a very, very strange scenario and one that we don't typically see. The theory that Zach Lee came up with was that after this cataclysmic event, there were so many miners that were not prepared for this giant dump in price that they were forced to just basically hedge at dollar value to make sure that they wouldn't have to drop off and shut down the machines. Now, obviously, it was too pronounced of a drop for a lot, because we saw the hash rate drop pretty significantly and has since recovered, which is some of that consolidation that you talked about there too. But that coupled with the fact that something like 85% of open interest on BitMEX, the largest futures exchange, was wiped off the board. It's a very strange scenario from just kind of like a futures context going into the halving, right? It's hard to understand what this negative funding rate means. Is it the miners? Is it something else? So if you guys in the chat have some thoughts there as to why that might be negative, definitely let us know. And then the final piece is that consolidation, right? If you're a Bitmain, if you're a Canaan, if you're a micro BT or any of these other large Bitcoin miners or mining pools, at some point you're incentivized to send the price lower to push out your competition and consolidate hash power with yourself. When you take this a step further and understand that something like over 50% of Bitcoin hash power is located in one province in China, it's easy to see how maybe those miners might work together to send the price a bit lower, or in some cases a bit higher when they're ready to exit. So those are kind of two interesting pieces of context I think that are worth adding to this discussion as well. But Q, I know we talked about this a little bit last night. I want to hear your thoughts as well. Where do you see? Does the halving end up being bullish, bearish? What do you think?
I think post-halving, you're going to have to look at what the events are surrounding like traditional markets, right? Like if we open the economy back up and everything goes well and we're just like cruising along and everything's fine, we're going to see a BTC pump from like a retail perspective. I think like people are going to, have confidence in, but also like a little tinge of like maybe, an idea that they shouldn't have all of their money in cash, or they shouldn't have all their money in certain things, and maybe digital assets are the way to go. But if you come out of the halving in like, let's say a month or two time frame, and we open back up, and then maybe the virus has like a reinfection point, or like reinfection is probably not the right word, but like an infection rate starts to go up as we reopen, or you see that economy start to like actually tank downwards, which is where everyone thought we would be. I don't really, the stock market kind of doesn't make any sense right now to me. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that, but like if we start seeing the traditional stock market fall, I'm looking at that to trend. I'm looking at that to see that Bitcoin will trend downwards following that traditional market. I think there's a lot of people that say like Bitcoin's uncorrelated right now, and I kind of really don't understand that. I get like they're relatively uncorrelated, but it's still like somewhat uncorrelated. If the stock market crashes again, Bitcoin's going down, I guarantee you. I think we talked about it last night, and you said something like, yeah, we'll hit about 10K and then we'll fall back to 5, or like we'll hit 9 and we'll fall back to 5, which would be at the absolute worst thing to ever happen. Because what you'll see is all these new retail folks that maybe are like coming back from 2017, or maybe didn't join 2017 at all and are just now touching their feet into crypto, and like they get burned and they leave. It's like that's the worst case scenario, because then we're in another bear market for another 2-3 years until people feel confident again in digital assets. I will say one thing, like short term, this has been really bad for Bitcoin. I think if we had cruised along, we would be in a bull market right now. But like long term, this is COVID has essentially accelerated what's happening with digital assets and digitizing pretty much everything. One of the things I'll point out, and it's really like kind of not related to what we're talking about here, but it is. I was having that discussion with you where it's hard to see like macro changes in people's behavior day to day. Right. So like one of the things was that, I don't know, you liked the tweet, but I tweeted about that Fortnite concert that happened where like millions of people were watching that Travis Scott,
digital concert.
It was like a
basically.
digital concert essentially, where like they had millions of people within Fortnite, and you're kind of like watching this, and like it. Not only was it an amazing like visual experience that I had never like ever seen before within a visual game, but it's like a change in mindset, man. That people can like go into this and live through these digital types of worlds, and then people get more comfortable with digitization of dollars and all this stuff, and they're comfortable doing all these things from home. I know that's kind of a stretch, but to me, it's not. Like it's one of those things where you watch it and you're like, okay, people are starting to be more comfortable with this digitization of like their entire life. Now you don't have to go to see a physical concert. You're seeing live concerts online, and they're bringing in millions of viewers, where that's gonna like change the way people think, man. And that would not have happened if COVID didn't happen. It would have. I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened, but this is an accelerant. So like short term, I guess my answer would be super bearish on Bitcoin. I think what we see is we come out of this like opening of economy. The market crashes where it should have been too. Like this prop up of the stock market by the Fed makes absolutely zero sense. And like in the short term, it's going to be bad for the U.S. I understand that's a U.S. bias. We have a lot of people overseas. I still think we hit into a bear market, but like long term, COVID and all these macroeconomic events are pushing the world more towards digitization. I know I'm struggling with that word, and that shit is like huge. It's a complete accelerant of getting people to work from home, to have more of their life online. Now, I truly believe that that's like long term super bullish for Bitcoin. And
yeah, definitely. I mean, and then if you kind of tie in some of the other pieces too, like China's central bank digital currency, it's pretty hard to understand at this point, with it launching so soon or really being in kind of a testnet phase, if you will, that will be bearish for Bitcoin. It would be a complete 180 for the Chinese government to come out and say, hey, the mining of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency that is not issued by some government is illegal. They still may do it, right? And I think it's likely that a fundamental event will break the trend one way or another. Like you said, whether it is a stock market crash or some reigniting of the infection with the coronavirus, or some government or collection of governments banning crypto. So yeah, I'm on the same fence, and I think that unless we see massive retail demand and some fundamental shifts in the way that the crypto market is set up, meaning that if we saw a funding rate that stayed relatively flat or negative as the price continues to climb higher, it's going to be really hard to incentivize the few traders that are climbing back into the market after getting wrecked to go short. If Bitcoin jumps up to a 9K, a 10K, 11K, I think you start to see a little more interest around Bitcoin going short. Maybe the funding rate does pop a little positive and shorts start to get paid. But with most of the with most of the open interest being much lower than they were, and most of the volumes being much lower, I think that further accelerates the impact of that retail buy pressure, right? So it's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy of, well, as the price goes up, you see more people shorting in the futures market, but you also see more people buying in the spot market, especially from retail. So those shorts get licked, the price jumps higher, and it's just kind of this crazy pump like we saw in 17. So I think unless we get that, I would definitely agree. Short term, be careful. I think there's way too much uncertainty. And while it's not clear as to kind of what that fundamental event could be that could send Bitcoin from a 10K or a 9K down back to a 5 or even lower, it's one of those things that I think probably happens just because of all of this uncertainty. But that was I think that was a good discussion. We had some good comments from Shun, who's in Taiwan. He said basically that rainy season does make sense. It does occur in Taiwan. However, there are 4 major nuclear power plants, and that's what powers their major chip producers there. So I think this article from CoinDesk does a good job of kind of talking about some of those factors, and maybe part of the reason that traditionally when the Bitcoin halving happens in May, it times up well with with a bullish event. But
Yeah,
until then, we will see.
Yeah, that was a strong discussion. I think we spent a good amount of time on that, so we'll move on here. I do want to get to some of the comments, like you were saying, because I think we had some even like ranging back from our first talk when we were still in quick news. So Shun is saying, I wonder if all you Americans got your government dollar airdrops. I can't confirm I got my airdrop, Dean. Did you get yours? Mike, did you get yours?
What is it? The airdrop, the $1,200?
Yeah, the stim.
No, yeah, I didn't get that.
Oh man.
Yeah, I haven't got it either. I still need to file my 19 taxes, and then I'm hoping, fingers crossed, but we'll see.
Gotcha. So he went on to say, I think Russia and China will come out better than the U.S. in the long run. They have less entitlement problems. They're more used to hardship through former experience with communism. So hard times make great men there. So I've got Manuel in the chat. He said that I hear Coinbase Custody will allow mines, but I don't know exactly what it is. Is that LinkedIn? I believe Mines was launched like in 2018 or maybe even late 2017, but it's like a decentralized version of Twitter. So interesting to see Coinbase Custody allowing, if they're custodying Mines tokens. That's interesting. So what else do we got? Scott said, I personally think BTC will go past 10K. What else do we got here? That's pretty much it. You kind of touched on everything Shun was saying about the rainy season. So we can move on here. We've got to talk about Coinbase Oracle. Thanks for everybody that's in the chat. Please comment along.
Yep. So moving right along to Coinbase Oracle. So obviously we know in DeFi, all the issues that are happening, and part of the issues, or if not majority of the issues that are happening, is due to the oracles. And for those that don't understand what oracles do, they basically just they're in charge of feeding the price to a given entity. So for example, if I'm running, let's say, some kind of a lending entity, or whatnot, lending, borrowing, I'll use, let's say, price, that's being fed from an exchange or somewhere else, which uses an oracle to push the prices. So I know where, basically the general market is. And then I know when to margin call my clients if need be. So oracles have struggled because there's many things that certain players exploited, in terms of delay in pricing, where let's say in the broad market, price is updating slower or faster than the oracle, and they can exploit that difference there. Accuracy in pricing. If you have, let's say, some kind of price feed that's coming from an exchange that's not so trusted, and they have a bad tick in price, that can cause a lot of bad ripple effects if that price gets pushed to maybe lending platforms that margin call people for that. So there's a lot of issues around these oracles, and Coinbase came out basically saying, hey, we've set up our oracle that's going to be trusted, and you can rely on it in terms of providing very good price feed stability and so on. And they describe in the article actually two different ways you can go about setting up these oracles. You can obviously set it up on chain, it's what like dexes do, and then you can do it off chain with exchanges. But and there's pros and cons and kind of both of them, right? The ones that are not on the chain, they can get the price feed perhaps smoother, faster, so it doesn't can be exploited if it's on chain, can be visible by everybody. But that requires you to be trust the exchange, which Coinbase is a trusted exchange. It's regulated, obviously, and they're trying to fill that gap and provide oracle pricing for the DeFi space. And we know that Coinbase does own part of Compound, so they want the DeFi space to get better because they have skin in the game themselves. So they're going to provide BTC USD and ETH USD API. You can connect to Coinbase oracles and you can get the pricing there. I think it's a very good step in terms of establishing reliable oracles for DeFi space. Especially given certain things that can happen in terms of mispricing, exploiting certain things in terms of the delays and so on, front running and all of that stuff. And, at the end of the day, it becomes, a strong competitor to Chainlink. Like Mike, you mentioned when we were talking about before we started this episode. So I think it's I think it's a very good move. I want to see what you guys think about Coinbase getting into this price feed Oracle.
Yeah, Mike, before you talk, I also want to add Mike Anderson's thoughts here. Mike Anderson from Framework Ventures, and we'll talk about them in a second. He says, for anyone following the DeFi, this was on April 23rd, for anyone following the DeFi oracles or Chainlink ecosystems, the Coinbase Oracle announcement is the equivalent of IBM blockchain going after Ethereum for smart contracts, both market validating and completely missing the point. So go ahead.
Savage. Yeah.
Right.
Chainlink's been the dominant oracle, but I think what Coinbase is looking at when it surveys the DeFi ecosystem is that with some of these more institutional type partners coming in, especially on the trading side, we talked about the DeFi Alliance last week or the week before. It's very difficult to convince a Jump Trading or some of these others to use a potentially slower and riskier decentralized price oracle versus using a price oracle from a federally regulated institution.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, to Mike Anderson's point, right? Like I don't necessarily think they're missing the point. I just think that their audience, their audience base that they're targeting with this oracle is very different than what Chainlink is targeting. So, it makes sense to me. It's not obviously the most sexy kind of announcement from Coinbase, but with everything they're doing behind the scenes with Coinbase Custody and DeFi, it's a needed step.
Yeah, it seems akin to kind of like the stablecoin argument, where when CUSD or USDC first came out, people were like, "This completely misses the point of stablecoins. They should be decentralized."
Right.
And now what you have is USDC actually killing it. So it'll be interesting to see where Coinbase Oracles goes here. I'm not too familiar with price feeds and all of these in Chainlink. I'm not following the tech on Link and things like that. So I appreciate that insight there, Dima.
You got it.
Who's next? Is that me? Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay. So we just talked about Mike Anderson, him and Vance, I believe Stevenson. I don't know if So him and Vance basically head up Framework Ventures. They made a investment via tokens and not equity into Kava. So now Framework Ventures has 4% of all the circulating supply of tokens of Kava. I think we had Vance and Mike on the podcast, I think a month ago at this point. And one of the interesting things they said was when they make an investment into a company, they like to take a token investment and a majority token investment as well, so they can have some control of the network. So this goes along that thinking there. They I believe invested $750,000, the equivalent of 3.8.9% of all the tokens in circulating supply. Basically, Kava, if you guys don't know, Kava Labs is essentially making MakerDAO on the Cosmos ecosystem, but instead of just having ETH that is the collateral, they essentially have an assortment or a basket of different tokens that can be used as collateral because they have that inter-blockchain connectivity. That's obviously what Tendermint is essentially going for. So again, this is Framework's essentially investment thesis. They take a strong token investment and then they provide community support. I think based on the article, they were saying that it's Vance Spencer. So sorry, Vance, but Mike Anderson and Vance Spencer, they actually introduced Kava to the guys over at Chainlink, and that's where that partnership came in. I know Kava announced that Chainlink partnership a couple weeks ago. So all really good. I think this is obviously testing their thesis. So we'll see what Kava does here. But this is basically Framework taking a strong investment in Kava in the DeFi space as they push forward.
Yeah, the cojones on these guys, my goodness, to drop $750,000 in basically DeFi with all the things going on right now is pretty ballsy. It's not something that I could see myself doing, but based on their thesis saying our belief is that decentralized technologies and crypto economics represents a reshuffling of the status quo, and we invest in the cryptocurrencies enabling it. So if this is the case and DeFi ends up doing big things, and Kava is a main part of that, then obviously that will end up being a good investment. It's interesting as well. Some other context of the investment. Back on March 16th, they proposed a modification to the Kava framework, basically the monetary policy. They wanted to modify the inflation curve so that over time more Kava was created and used for some of these growth incentives. They wanted to also incentivize asset holders on the amount of USDX that they mint and how long this USDX is minted for. And then finally, to avoid essentially initial increases in the circulating supply, a lot of this additional Kava will be locked for 52 weeks before becoming liquid. So some portion of additional Kava may be held by the foundation, or somewhere within the ecosystem would be locked there. So they've been looking at Kava for some time. Obviously, I'm sure this is a calculated risk, but still definitely all things considered with DeFi and a lot of the hacks that have been happening, and obviously the traditional economy. It's pretty interesting. Definitely bullish Kava if framework is seeing something that nobody else is.
I think it's a good time for right now to get a very good negotiated contract in terms of how much money you put into a company, how much stake you get, especially where DeFi space is right now. So I think,
but they just bought tokens, I think, over
really?
on the market. Yeah, I don't think maybe they bought them OTC, but I think pretty much just straight up token play.
I think it's definitely OTC. You think they
if it's OTC, then I would want to see what price they got. Right. if they didn't get the market price, if they got a discount. On that block. So, but it's interesting to know that they're locked in, right? So.
Yeah, I mean taking down tokens and staking them to a network, and taking that active community play. We'll see how it all works out. I think having Mike and Vance on the podcast will be literally one of my favorite stories of all time on Layer 1, because I don't know if you remember, Dima, but do you remember when we did that interview?
Yeah.
It was literally on Black Thursday, and Synthetics, one of the Synthetics, one of their main investments, was down I believe 60 something %, something like that. Obviously all the tokens that they were investing got hit hard because they were super risk on, the most risk on you could ever be. So for them to even take the interview that day was awesome, but they were looking like death when we first had them on for the first 10 minutes. I was very surprised they even took the interview. So that will be one of my favorite stories on Layer 1 of all time.
Do you guys know if they've raised outside capital, or is it all self-funded?
I would have to go back.
I think it was self-funded.
That would be my first guess.
Yeah, it makes more sense then. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Gotcha.
All right, well, we've got MakerDAO, a MakerDAO lawsuit before we hop into Ethereum. Shun, before we hop into Ethereum too, we'll hit one of your questions that we can get into discussion. So let's hit it.
Yeah, so to wrap up the DeFi space with the lawsuit here, MakerDAO receives a class action lawsuit from victims of Black Thursday losses. It's basically explains the certain issues where MakerDAO basically didn't clearly outline the risks when it comes to losing more money beyond the margin that you put in, which is something that the space hasn't really seen an issue like this in the past, where they have to clarify that the risks can go beyond the collateral that you put in. This is something that we've experienced in obviously Forex. That put a bunch of brokers out of business when there was a crash there during the Swiss National Bank unpegging the euro. But here with the MakerDAO, basically they're suing, saying that they misrepresented the risk. Users were led to believe the maximum loss of depositing collateral would be the liquidation penalty. But due to the congestion with liquidations on the Ethereum network, you know, it was congested and they couldn't liquidate it fast enough to basically just take the collateral as the penalty for liquidation. So therefore, you know, this occurred and people lost more than they expected on their positions because of this congestion on Ethereum and all these liquidations that were happening. So they're trying to sue MakerDAO for, you know, for basically the losses that they have incurred. They're seeking 8.3 million from losses.
Yeah, it says here the main plaintiff of the class action lawsuit is expecting 1,000 different members to join the suit, which would include 8.3 million, but also damages up to 20 million. So a little over 28 million there total. This is not good for MakerDAO. I don't care what you say about DeFi. At the end of the day, MakerDAO is relatively centralized. I know they've been trying to dissolve the Maker Foundation, and they've kind of gone about making users whole in a decentralized way by putting it up to a vote. Evidently, 65% of voters chose yes to get some sort of compensation plan in place for a lot of these users. But when it comes to black swan events like this, and you have even a foundation that represents this this setup, it's, you know, it doesn't bode well in court for these folks, for Rune and these in his team. So yeah, not good for Maker and not good for DeFi. If, let's say, there's a settlement here and then other issues with maybe dForce or something like this, some sort of hack, right, or exploit where people are losing their money. If there's already a settlement in some court, then it allows those future plaintiffs to settle a lot easier.
I think this really points out to the overall crypto world is that a lot of, for most of the time, we just avoid the counterparty risk when it comes to, you know, like these events that happen, right? So nobody really, you know, thinks about, okay, what if, you know, Bitcoin drops, you know, 80% in an hour? Will this, you know, actually work? Will you be able to liquidate me, you know, and take only my margin and nothing beyond that? Like all of these questions that people didn't really ask. I don't know, maybe they were just, you know, avoiding them or not, you know, thinking like that this could ever happen. But it does bring up, you know, going forward, I think a lot of people are going to start investigating and asking these tough questions, like, you know, for these counterparties to evaluate where they want to station their money and who they want to work with so they can withstand, you know, issues like that going forward.
Got it. Yeah. So if no thoughts there from you, Q, we can go ahead and move on to Ethereum here. Some bullish news for ETH 2.0. Evidently, the ETH 2.0 testnet, or at least one of the first testnet versions of ETH 2.0, is up and running. So it's attracted nearly 20,000 different validators to this testnet and has also mined and validated the first block. You know, it's important to note that this does not come directly from the Ethereum Foundation. It was launched on April 16th by Prismatic Labs, if I'm spelling that right, or I'm saying that right. It's PRYSMATIC, Prismatic Labs, which is basically just an engineering team that's working on ETH 2.0 tech infrastructure. So this is, you know, brand new. Goal is to test the phase 0 proof of stake protocol under ETH 2.0. Vitalik did come out and say, you know, obviously this is great, but there will be kind of an official multi-client testnet that's going to come out at least once or twice to have some testing done on the Genesis mechanism, which will, you know, mine and validate the very first block on the new proof of stake network. So ETH 2.0 is chugging along. Not a ton of news on this front. You know, it's just basically an update that we saw here on Decrypt. Obviously, that is a major bullish event, I think, for obviously ETH, but also just for the general crypto ecosystem as more folks are made aware of some of the staking capabilities and kind of some of the general interest-bearing abilities that crypto is presenting, be it via ETH or some of these other hybrid proof of stake networks like Tezos and whatnot. So
yeah, a couple questions here, and one of them has to do with what Manuel just said. What's the exact date for ETH 2.0? And then if we don't have a date, what do you guys think is the probable date of launch of ETH 2.0?
So ETH 2.0 has multiple phases, right? I think there's 3 or 4 total phases: phase 0, phase 1, and so on. Phase 0 is expected in July now. So it got pushed back and pushed back. I think it was supposed to come out at the end of 19, and then it was January 2020. Then it was spring, and now it's expected that it's July. So there's I don't remember off the top of my head what each phase specifically has, but I think we have to get to phase 1, or at least test net of kind of phase 1, the initial instances of phase 1, to have the full staking capabilities, which if you look at some of the things that the Vitalik and the Ethereum Foundation have said in the past, is that they are basically 90+% certain that ETH 2.0 will have those staking characteristics by the end of 2020. So next, really kind of big news should be sometime in July, sometime in the summer. Then hopefully with, kind of some more additions to that phase 0 launch by the end of the year. But as always, with anything in crypto, there's an initial time that's presented, and then that doesn't end up happening. And then it's just kind of like, well, as soon as we get there, that's when it'll go live.
Yep. That sounds about right.
So that's ETH 2.0 there. Dean, what's going on with Grayscale?
Yeah, so Grayscale, they tend to kind of make the headlines. We cover them quite a bit. Obviously, it's a pretty big fund that offers the ability for institutional players to get exposure to Bitcoin, ETH, and without actually going out and buying themselves like physical ETH or BTC. They do that through their trust that they have. One of them is ETH Trust, and the headline here is Grayscale is buying half of all newly minted ETH in 2020, and they own about 1.1 of the circulating supply in ETH. Overall. So they're buying up ETH quite a bit. And the interesting thing about it, we've covered it before where we talked about their BTC trust, is that the investors that are getting into this trust, they're buying ETH or Bitcoin at a significant premium. And the premium is actually like 400% for ETH, which is insane. So it's kind of like what they're doing is they're buying basically ETH for this trust, and they're chopping it up into smaller products for their investors and marking it up at a premium. So, and it's kind of like, I guess it's for their services to give these institutional investors exposure. They mark it up, and they're fine. Those investors are fine with that markup, and they still get exposure to crypto with that. So that's, I think that's pretty interesting to see, Grayscale is continuing to do that with ETH. And I think in general, ETH is becoming, a lot more popular with the narrative of the, stable coins that we have right now, because, at the end of the day, if you're on the ETH network, you're going to have to spend some money on that gas, which is essentially ETH. So I think, Grayscale is seeing, an opportunity there. If we're going to continue to see people, move to stable coins, then that's going to be an opportunity for ETH, and they're offering that exposure to their institutional investors.
Cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to move on to the next story. Yeah. Did you have anything based on Grayscale's investment, Mike?
There's just the Grayscale thing is kind of fishy to me because of this ARB that happens. I can never remember exactly what it is, but basically Grayscale sells BTC and ETH to quote unquote institutional investors at a huge premium. But there's an ARB that most of these institutions run that kind of poorly reflects real demand in BTC or ETH from institutional folks, because the net value of Ether BTC is at a premium. So again, I don't remember what it is. I don't know if you can lend ETH and BTC to Grayscale that they then sell, if it's something like that. So you can, basically just capture the higher value and then pull your ETH and BTC out, as that comes closer to realized price or whatnot. But I always kind of, give it that skeptical look when people are saying that Grayscale is, kind of pushing forward and there's all this demand and blah, blah, blah.
Got it. Okay. Well, we appreciate you guys filling in. Obviously, I think we reached up to about 18, sitting at like 14 right now, guys. So we're within Ethereum right now. We'll move on to EOS and then Binance, and then we'll wrap up. So the last story here for Ethereum, Pool Together. We did have Leighton Cusack, who is the founder of Pool Together, on Layer 1, and it looks like they're launching a new feature. Initially, I thought it was like a little bit different than what it actually is. Essentially, what they're launching is a feature called pods. It's essentially going to be an ability to create a lottery pool on top of the pool that they already have. So kind of like you have in lotteries today. So in traditional lotteries, you can throw your ticket in with the lot and see if you win, or you could throw yourself in like a office lottery pool, and that increases your chance to win. Obviously, you receive less of a percentage, not just 100%. You receive whatever you have within that pool. So that's what they've launched, Pods, which is allows any user to create a pool on top of their lottery pool that exists today. They obviously have gotten investments from like Coinbase, where Coinbase has put 500,000 in to increase the pot, which is released every 7 days, I believe. And they also launched USDC, which gets released every day. I believe it's a 24-hour rolling. For those that don't know what Pool Together is, it's just a lottery system that runs on their decentralized finance system where you just get a payout. So instead of maybe, receiving interest on your $100, you could put it in this pool and try to win the actual pool of all of this interest that accrues within this lottery system. The better feature that they need to launch, and they talk about it in this article, but that it needs to launch like ASAP, is the ability for users to create their own pools, not on top of their lottery system. So essentially what we could do is create a layer 1 pool where everyone throws their money in, and every week somebody wins out of the money that we have within that pool that just sits there. That's an example of like a community-led or community-driven approach that would receive mass adoption, I think. So you could almost go to like the local school, and you could have a lottery within that school that goes to certain things that fund that system. That's going to be something that they can implement that would honestly, I feel like would lead not only to mass adoption, but just a great feature in general, and one that I could see us using on Layer 1. That would be really cool.
Yeah,
what do you guys
for
think?
sure. Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd love to figure out a way to use it here. It's an interesting concept, and congrats to them for kind of growing so fast and continuing to innovate. It's one of those things that it's not complicated, but a lot of times simple is effective, and they seem to be doing well. So congrats to those guys.
Yeah, if they can make a good UX UI for people to just have their local lottery pools, that's an honestly amazing feature that I think people would be interested in. Dima, you got anything on that?
Yeah, I'm all about them no loss lotteries, man. Yeah. So yeah, no, we obviously talked to them, so it was great. I'm glad to see they're progressing further. So that feature you talked about, that should be exciting. So there's no date on when it's
Not on the personal pods. The actual pods, I believe, is like already like launched. So that the pod where we could create on top of their own lottery pool is already out. Otherwise, okay. the personal pods are going to be a feature. Obviously, that's going to be like a little bit different. They're gonna, if you have like thousands of different pods that are all receiving, I'm sure there's a little bit more functionality that they need to get in, like the infrastructure set up for. So that'll probably be a little while, but no actual date on that, guys. But when we do, we'll let you know, because I think it would be cool to do some type of layer 1 pod where each week a user gets a certain amount of I think it was, is it DAI? I think it's DAI that's inside of Pool Together. So yeah, man, that's about it. I think I'll move it along to EOS here. Appreciate you guys joining the chat. I'm moving the column and not the arrow, guys.
Uh-oh.
Production.
Interesting news on EOS. I saw you tweeting as well about the was it the BNS or DNS, whatever China's new blockchain network is that is going to have functionality for EOS and ETH to connect. That's definitely a bullish sign. But it looks like there's some other bullish events happening for EOS in the next year as well.
Yeah, I think what you just talked about, that BSN, where China's launching like their public blockchain that's going to be connected specifically to a couple blockchains, I believe, Bitcoin, Ethereum. It looks like there's no way it could be Ripple, but a couple others. But that's leading to like a sentiment increase, or at least a social media sentiment increase, based on this data given by Santiment. So I know that's kind of a word mouthful, but a ton of words there that kind of closely resemble each other. But essentially, Santiment is a data aggregator for like social media sentiment, and that's seen a increase in EOS sentiment over the past, I believe, like month, which coincides with that BSN announcement that came out, where blockchain, I believe a blockchain-based service network that was released by China is going to implement EOS and Ethereum specifically. I think there was a couple more, like I said. So EOS sentiment's picking up. We did talk about that, Mike, where Chinese retail users are something that rarely Western users talk about, obviously. But that type of sentiment that comes from the EOS or it comes from the Chinese ecosystem, I believe, like drives a lot of retail demand that we don't talk about on a day-to-day basis. So
right,
it's something that EOS essentially lost, or I guess probably became disenfranchised with when all that nonsense with block producers was going on. We kind of have that East-West feud between block producers, and I think the Chinese community kind of was like, I guess like, not incentivized to leave, but they were definitely like, you definitely saw a drop off in sentiment among Chinese retail users around that time frame. So it's good to see that sentiment picking up, and that might have to do with a lot of this BSN stuff. What do you think?
I was going to bring up the point about that rumor that you were hearing as of late. I don't know if you want to talk about that, or if you just want to move on to voice.
That is a hard-hitting piece of news. I guess, yeah, go ahead. I mean, you can do.
You tell me, right? You heard the rumor. I mean, basically, broadly, is that that the Chinese ecosystem around EOS is not happy with Block One being able to vote a lot of their tokens. It sounds like. Is that roughly right? And that there, potential maybe for a fork or something like that, where you would have kind of a Chinese-based EOS and then a Western plus Block One EOS, or am I missing the point?
No, you got the point. I don't know how reliable that information is up to this point, but basically I got a tip this morning that there's growing idea among the EOS or the Chinese EOS user base that there's going to be like some type of Chinese fork of the EOS.io software. So who knows, guys? Take that with a grain of salt up to this point. We'll see. Obviously, in the short term, that would create like a huge bullish sentiment within EOS to like mop up that token, because a hard fork obviously means that there's going to be a snapshot of current tokens. I know some people were in the chat that I was in that hint got dropped, and was hoping that it would be Genesis snapshots, but I don't think that would be the right course of action.
No way.
Essentially, yeah, if there was this fork that was going to happen with on the EOS ecosystem, you would have a snapshot of the current EOS holders, and that would snapshot whatever this new EOS token was going to be. Guys, again, that was not a story that
is confirmed in any way. Yeah.
at any way. So don't just take that with a grain of salt.
What is it? EOS Dan Lermer's vision?
We got to throw some tinfoil hat, kind of conspiracy theory stuff in here. I think that's the first one we've had today. So,
yeah, we don't know how much work Block One is doing overseas, specifically in China. So whether that, sentiment of the Chinese community wanting to fork away because of Block One specifically, I don't know the answer to that, right?
Maybe it's just a threat. If it's just a threat, like, hey, if you don't throw some votes towards Bitfinex and all the Chinese block producers, guess what we're gonna do?
Yeah, that's a good thought. I think Block One is voting starting early May, so coming up here. So Block One's going to start throwing their weight around. Maybe this is a ploy to kind of like, hey, you need to start throwing some votes our way when you do begin your voting process. So, yeah, we'll see, man. That'll be interesting. That would be one of the most interesting things to happen in crypto. It would be
I wonder if they would like vote for some Chinese entities but not the others, and then that breaks them apart basically, and they start kind of not being friendly to each other there. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting event.
a lot of game theory.
Yeah.
I will say if that fork does actually get carried out, that's huge short term bullish on EOS, man. People are going to be mopping up those tokens, and then you eventually have whatever that EOS fork is going to be. So good news for EOS holders if that does happen. Long term, who the hell knows? But to your point, Mike, we were talking about that, and I did tweet that out. Like, I think it gets buried in a lot of people's thought processes in the West, whether that be US or European based, but a lot of retail users within Asia right now. And if you could win the Chinese sentiment, then you're on your way. I think that's honestly what drove a lot of the EOS price back in the day. It was kind of seen as this, within the Chinese community, it was going to be the next Ethereum. So, anyways. That's pretty much the news there. I think Shun was in the chat. He says, "Is there a reliable EOS USD stablecoin? Is there a reliable wrapped EOS BTC coin?" Not too sure on the second, but EOS DT I believe is the main stablecoin on EOS that you can check out. So that, at least within the community, that's going to be the situation. It looks like, again, we have another Layer1Live where the price of oil or oil futures is going to tank. Manuel's in the chat saying, again, oil at negative 24%. So I feel like this is Groundhog Day at this point. So the only other point we had for EOS guys was Voice, the CEO of Voice. I got to get the guy's name. I completely always forget this guy's name, but he basically said, it looks like Salah Zalatimo, the former guy over at Forbes, was, and now CEO of Voice, pretty much came out and said that Voice is going to launch globally in Q1 of 2021. So a lot beyond where a lot of us thought Voice was going to launch. We were kind of hoping for that Q3, Q4 launch. This is going to be global, so I guess not everyone's going to have access outside the U.S. for that amount of time. It looks like there's going to be a big update around that June timeframe. I know we had Block 1 June last year, so it looks like that's going to be a Q1 2021 launch. Again, I would say that this is pretty bearish on Voice. They have $150 million that they got from B1, so we'll see what they do with it. They've obviously been hiring a ton. I think they're probably like amongst the leaders in hires over the past quarter, and will continue to be so. Our guy Ash is over there as well. That'll be interesting. So, yeah. I mean,
the only thing I see, Deem has updated his background here on Zoom to the oil barrels again. He's ready for his delivery. But the only thing is that I feel like Q1 2021 may allow for a pretty nice EOS pump if we assume that we don't see catastrophic events in the traditional market or in the crypto markets, but can get through some sort of bearish period here towards the end of the year, the beginning of 2021. EOS does what they do. They put out the hype around Voice and figure out some way to integrate the EOS token with the Voice platform. Don't sell it off as fully bearish yet, because I think, as I've said before, EOS is best at marketing and best at kind of building up anticipation and hype, which always tends to lead to the EOS price increasing. We saw that with the year-long ICO they did up, waiting for the mainnet to launch. We saw that with the original June Voice event where it pumped all the way back up to about $8. So, I could totally see that happening there on the EOS front. But
I was going to say that, one thing that is kind of bearish, I guess, is the fact that, right now a lot of people are staying at home and they're spending time on social networks and so on. So by, releasing voice later on, they're kind of missing out on an opportunity there to capture the market of people that are already like, right now getting, spending more time on social media and so on. And also from their perspective, almost every single social media site, they first started to be more exclusive, and where they're letting just a small portion of people and go from there, like Facebook. And so I think having the environment where there's everybody's at home and on social networks, and you open up a limited membership section, I think that could have been a huge opportunity, which right now it seems like they're kind of missing out on that.
You also have the ability, like taking the other side of that, like if they had launched at this point with the product that they have now, it would have been catastrophic, because it would have been like, here's our product, it's not in beta, it's out for the world here, everyone take a look, and everyone realizes, oh shit, like, first of all, Voice doesn't even know what it wants to be. It launched as a competitor to Twitter and Facebook, and now it's become some type of like pseudo KYC medium. So you have like this situation where Voice doesn't even know what it wants to be. It launched this way, and now it's like this whole nother thing. So I think they're giving themselves time to figure this out. Now that's bearish in the sense that like in tech, you got to move quick. Like
Right.
like you're going to have this social media platform that takes 3 years to come out. It's like, okay, like we'll see. But like we always say, EOS has that money. Block One, or I said that wrong. Block One's got that money. So Scott, you're over here saying that you're using Voice daily. So I'd love to hear what you have to think about Voice and where you think the direction of the platform's heading. I'm in there like every week. I think I've posted one time. It still has a lot to do, or the Voice team has a lot on their plate, and they need to really kick that into high gear, because just from like my specific user perspective, I didn't like it. I think it was like very, how can I put this? It was very like echo chamber-ish. Like you have the entire.
Did you use
year.
a mobile or web?
They don't even have mobile. It's all desktop.
No, but I'm saying like on you can go through Safari, or
it's all desktop right now. What do you mean by it?
What browser did you use?
Yeah. Did you use a browser?
Yeah, it's just browser.
Oh, okay.
Desktop only.
Yeah, but you use the browser on the phone, or did you use the browser on the computer?
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
No. I just use desktop browser. Okay. They're planning on rolling out mobile. I'm sure that might be an update that we'll see. Like they said in mid-May, or not mid-May, June to August timeframe. They said around mid-year. So we'll see. Voice still has a long way to go. I'll reiterate, Block One's got money, man. They just pumped 150 mil into this shit. So that's something that not a lot of platforms can say, where they're trying to freaking, raise 20, 30, 40 million dollars. Voice has that funding, 3, 4, 5x that. So, that's about it.
Yeah, we can move right on here to Binance. Hive has been in the news with Binance a little bit here. Hive, again, is that fork of the Steam project, or the Steemit project, which has certainly been in the news because of the Justin Sun involvement and all the CZ involvement, and then CZ basically pulling out of being involved with Justin, and not even just pulling out, but going against what Justin wants. Taking shots on Twitter. I mean, the Justin Sun CZ kind of relationship here has gone through some fractures, but Hive seems to be doing well, at least from a price standpoint. It's up over 400% in just a few days after listing. It's on Binance, it's on Bittrex, it's on Huobi. We were even talking this morning because there was a giant ARB opportunity, something like a 20-25% ARB opportunity between Huobi and Binance. But starting on Wednesday, Binance will officially commence deposits and withdrawals of Hive. So, it's been a pretty impressive run. Like I said, 400+%. They're somewhere around 35 to 40 in top 100 by market cap. And anytime you can see a price pump like that, it's going to get people's attention. So maybe we see a little bit more. Hopefully this doesn't just kind of pump and dump into oblivion like so many of these forks do. But it seems to have the backing of CZ, seems to have the backing of Binance in general, as well as some of these other exchanges. So net bullish for Hive.
It's funny how. Oh, go ahead, Dima. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's funny how the Steam community actually like profited from this like 2, 3, 4, 5x when at first they were completely against Justin doing this. Justin actually made them I wouldn't say a small fortune, but he definitely made them some money through this situation where they ended up having to fork, and now their token's up 400% from where it was. I think it's above Steam considerably.
Oh, yeah,
I don't even
definitely
know where Steam is on the market cap list, but Hive I think premiered on CMC at like 46 or something like that. So it's funny they go from shitting on Justin's son in kind of like a situation where they were cursing his name to actually Justin came out of this and they profited from this move. It's also, like you said, interesting to see like CZ and the Justin relationship, right? Like they seem to be like a tandem or like a possible tandem in crypto. Both of them, I believe, are Chinese, so there is a connection there. Just being within the Chinese community and being two leaders within crypto, to being complete adversaries now. Like CZ is taking shots, Binance is listing Hive. That is a interesting thing to keep in mind.
There's a lot of mixed feelings about Justin's son in China, because when he started, doing startups and business in China, there was a lot of kind of negative sentiment around how he worked there. So, yeah, just putting it out there.
It's always interesting with Tron.
Yeah, I feel like he's like a representation of how they do business over there. Based on all the connections that we have that talk about China, and we talk with Maple on a not weekly basis, but we hear from him enough, and we had that episode with him, and he seems to be like the embodiment of how the Chinese do business.
I don't know about that. I don't know if you could say Justin's son
no way.
is the embodiment of the way that China does business. At least I wouldn't, but I mean, I think there are cultural differences, but it's hard to make that generalization.
Yeah, and I think when people talk Justin Sun and the way he does business, I think they in the West we like often view it negatively. But honestly, he's just a grinder, man. Like a lot of what he does, is looked upon, poorly by the Western community, because a lot of it is like missing substance. But what I'm not looking at it in a negative aspect at all. I mean, he's just creating these different entities, and I don't want to call it pumping and dumping, man, but like that's essentially what Maple was telling us on the episode. Like this is the idea in China. You're essentially there to make money. You get in, you get out. It's like, and people don't look at it negatively over there. It's more of like a who can market themselves the best, who can they're very much more in like some type of like rat race, if that makes sense, than I think we are over here, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say the pump. The interesting thing about this article is that the pump is back, whether it's a Binance pump or just any pump in general. Because, like I said, 4x plus here on Hive. We saw Solana pump over 3x. ITAM Games pumped a little bit, a much smaller project on Upbit. And you've got some other listings that I'm sure are going to be coming up here. I don't know how Orchid has done on Coinbase. That would be another interesting one to check out. But it's like these weird, obviously 2017, right? As soon as you hit a listing on Binance, pretty much everything pumped. It was impossible to miss. And then that faded, and it kind of pops up here and there. The JST token on Tron, which is his move into DeFi on Tron. It'll be interesting to see how that does. That might be kind of affirmation or the end of this pump cycle, but we'll see.
Yeah, go ahead.
What happened with the lawsuit, with the Hive lawsuit that was going around? Remember that?
The what?
The Hive lawsuit. There was some company in Canada, I think, trying to sue the Hive.
There was like a Hive company that was trying to sue, like a trademark kind of legal situation. I don't know.
These things take a while. It's gonna be many months before that plays out, unless they just fully drop it and say, you know what, forget about it.
Yeah.
But as Hive continues to grow in popularity, it only becomes more of a problem for that company.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it looks like Shun's in the chat, and he's taking your side here, Mike. He said, no, Justin is not doing right for the Chinese. People can see through shallow marketing here, too. I think the point that I'm trying to get to is that, like, it's definitely not good from, like, a Western user or Western, like, eyes to be viewing this, what Justin's doing. I think, like, that does look bad from our perspective. My point is that I don't think many like Chinese users or Chinese, I guess, like citizens really care what the outside perspective is. I think like that was the point that Maple was trying to make, that they're kind of just the ends justify the means. You're in this, you're trying to make money. Like that's the situation over there. Now, again, being someone that's not Chinese, I haven't traveled to China. I'm just hearing this from other people's perspectives. So obviously Shun and some other people are going to have different perspectives and maybe are right, maybe they're not. This is just what I'm hearing, from my connections that talk about like business in China, essentially.
Yeah, I just don't think you can sum up business in China to Justin's son. Justin's a bad example. I get your point. I think he's just he's a bad example. I don't think a lot of people in China look to him as like people in Russia would look to like a Vitalik. I think Vitalik's from Russia, or people in the U.S. would look to, some prominent U.S. figure.
Yeah, he's certainly not on their level.
He's not well respected.
Yeah, I just think he's an embodiment of the negative sentiment that we hear about Chinese founders and Chinese entrepreneurs. So,
all right. So the last piece of news for Binance is Binance is launching they launched the mining pool for Bitcoin. So now you can participate in this mining pool on Binance and earn the rewards. Interesting how they implemented this prior to the halving. Basically the way it's set up, it's pay per share, full pay per share. So you can, it gives exposure to their users. So they can get into this pool and essentially earn rewards initially for BTC. They're going to introduce others as well. They're going to do proof of stake, proof of work tokens. So this is just the initial stages of it. And it's just another kind of episode of Binance expanding into different sectors, and mining is definitely one of them that they're trying to capitalize on. And in the end, it's going to give their users, first of all, you stay on their platform. Second of all, you earn the rewards, and third of all, you get to trade that on their platform. So that means their volumes are going to be looking good, and they're going to be making commission off them trades. So I think all in all, that's very good for Binance.
Yeah, constant expansion for Binance. Obviously, if you look at the pool breakdown as we see it right now, the top 3 BTC pools are F2 Pool, Poolin, and BTC.com, which makes up a combined like almost 50%, right around 50%. So the more decentralization we can get, the better. You don't want 3 controlling almost 50% and 4 controlling, if you include Ant Pool, that's over 60% of the distribution of Bitcoin's hash rate. Just gets a little sketchy, especially as we start to talk further consolidation. If that number jumps, yes, they are different entities, but it's tough to continue to pitch decentralized cryptocurrency when there's let's say this jumps from 60 some percent to 80 some percent in a big dump down. You would start to see that discussion pop up a little bit more about, hey, is this actually decentralized, right? What power do these mining pools have? Are they good for Bitcoin? Yada yada yada.
Rollback.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is CZ's plan. He's gonna get some of that hash rate, and then he's gonna roll this shit back.
Roll the BTC back to 20K.
Yeah, I wonder. I wonder if they have the opportunity, kind of how Mashinsky does on his platform, where they have rewards that they can pay out and sell. I wonder if CZ will do something where he can offer that same equivalent in BNB to what the user would have received in BTC. I wonder if that's like something he could roll out.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, they don't talk about it obviously, but that could be.
Yeah,
that could be something. But yeah, that's it for the Binance, and
yeah,
that's it for everything.
Pretty much what we got. Appreciate everybody stopping in. We've been coming up on 2 hours here, been streaming for about 104 minutes. So appreciate everybody that's been hanging out. Hopefully oil is still in the positive and not negative yet, but we'll have an interview or two this week for you guys. Obviously Dimitri's desk as always, and then stay tuned. Join us in the Telegram if you want to hang out with us here on this Saturday or next week.
Yeah, thanks for everybody following along. I'll give a quick shout out. Shun, we had Scott, we had River, we had Manuel in the chat. So appreciate all you guys leaving comments. Thanks for everybody that leaves comments afterwards as well as everyone that's listening on audio this week. So we appreciate everything. You guys make these chats way more, or discussions way more fun. So we will continue to do Layer1Live every week at 1. I think we did 1:30 today, but we're going to do it continuously at 1 p.m. on Mondays. We have that hangout on Saturday as well as everything Mike just talked about during the week. So appreciate you guys following along, and we'll see you guys next week.